sanctuary in which to do it. Regarding sacrifices, now this is a big old long list that no longer applies for the most part because Yeshua took care of it for our part. And on the Jewish end of the world, well, they don't have a temple and a sacrificial system and a Levitical priesthood to carry it out. But some of the ones that would apply: not to eat from the untithed produce. Do not delay payment of a free will or obligatory offering. Do not break your word even without an oath.
May we go back to regarding the temple?
Sure.
The incense and the anointing oil.
Mm-hmm.
Still applicable?
It's still applicable, yes. Because it was an everlasting ordinance in the Torah. And it was said, don't make this. And even if we could, we don't have the ingredients for the most part to make it here.
Well, they're making it similar. For example, the second one, not to make any oil similar to anointing oil. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
Many of us have vials over the right.
Well, we use frankincense and myrrh, or we use olive oil. We use
cinnamon.
Yeah. But we use different types of oil, but not a mixture exactly like the one in the temple. So regarding priests, well, there are none. Regarding dietary laws, Christians as a majority do not keep the dietary laws found in Torah. So we're going to cover this next week when we look at the balance of Torah, which is kept by observant believers. Regarding agriculture, most of it deals within the land of Israel, but not to leave the Levites without support, and this is one that the Christian community uses to apply to taking care of their pastors, their clergy, and whatnot. So, in that. Regarding business and the treatment of slaves, well, I don't think a whole lot of us have slaves, but we do have employees, so the same thing would apply. But when we go through this, we're going to see that it doesn't apply to what we would think of on Saturday and Sunday, or on Sunday or Shabbat service. I mean, these are things that we do in our day-to-day, whether we're treating the direct TV guy that comes to install a dish in your house, or where you're dealing with your employees. These things apply. How to deal with the poor. It says, don't deny charity to the poor. Not to send a bondservant away empty-handed. And we see this in severance packages. When somebody quits or they get terminated, especially if you're a CEO or something, you don't go away empty-handed. Not that a CEO is anything near to being a slave, but do not demand payment from a debtor who cannot pay. Not participating in an agreement involving interest. Now, this is different from banking. We've talked about it a couple of times. If somebody lends me $20, or if I lend somebody $20, and they're a brother or a sister, then they're not to charge me interest on that 20, and I'm not to charge them. You know, a loan is a loan. And in most cases, you give them a loan without expecting repayment. So, not delaying payment to an employee as punishment. And we see this happening in business quite regularly that, well, I'll show you, I'm just going to hold your paycheck until the very last second, and maybe even beyond. You know, I'm going to tell you that paychecks won't be here till Monday when they're supposed to be there on Friday, because I don't like you and I don't like the way you work and I want you to quit. Not taking a pledge from a debtor by force. Not to keep a pledge of a poor person when it is needed by him or her. And this goes with the positive commandment of the same thing. It says, don't pledge something if you're going to need it. Or to pledge something that you're going to need. So, if somebody pledges you their rake and they need their rake back, don't keep the rake back from them. Give them the rake so that they can go and rake their leaves. It says not to take a pledge from a widow. Not taking one's business utensils or food as a pledge. Well, don't take somebody's livelihood in payment for something. Don't take their last morsel of bread. Don't take their last $5 if that's all they have. Well, not abducting an Israelite. This deals with kidnapping. Don't kidnap. There's a harsh one. That keeps us under bondage there.
Really does.
Don't kidnap. Don't steal. Don't rob. These are very harsh commandments, all those do nots in the Torah. Not fraudulently altering land boundaries and land markers. You know, this deals with real estate. It doesn't deal with the 2 hours you spend at church on Sunday. This deals with real estate practices. Don't commit fraud when you're surveying a piece of property, so that when you sell it exactly what you see is what you get. Not to usurp debt, or don't commit fraud. That's a harsh commandment to keep. Don't commit fraud. Don't swear falsely regarding another's property. If you know that belongs to somebody else, don't say it doesn't belong to them. Not wronging or deceiving one another in business. That's a hard one to keep. Not wronging or misleading each other, even verbally. Not harming the stranger among you verbally. And these go on. These are basically how to treat each other.
These are
Not-
half-truths.
Huh?
That's all that, don't give a half-truth.
Yeah, a half-truth. You know. Here's a question. Is keeping back the truth wrong to save a life? When the Franks were hidden behind the wall in this German businessman's office, and he lied to the Germans saying that he didn't know where they were in order to save an entire family. Was that right, or was that wrong?
I don't think he was right, because he was saving lives.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about half-truths is where, and the children usually get this. They'll just go, well, I was at so-and-so's house.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't say when they were at so-and-so's house. And so they really wasn't there when
Yeah.
when they were supposed to have been.
Well,
Or, that's what I'm.
manipulation.
Misleading. That's
Manipulation of the truth.
Yes. You're clear, right?
I studied under a rabbi years ago. He used to say that manipulation, even manipulation of the truth, is a form of witchcraft. So, you know, it's up there. Manipulation of the truth is the same as not telling the truth. Go on, not afflicting widows and orphans. These harsh do not commandments. Not allowing employees to be mistreated. Darn it.
Yeah, really.
Not to withhold food, clothing, or conjugal rights. You know. I had this one on the tip of my tongue and it just went right out the door. But, well, let's go on. I'll remember it in a minute. Not to sell a captive woman, not treating a captive woman as a slave. We take these two, and in fact we can take that not to withhold food, clothing, or conjugal rights and put them all together. We have a huge problem with sex trafficking. These fit into that category. So basically, sex trafficking is against Torah.
That's pretty hard to figure out.
And that's, you know, that's like, wow, these do-nots are very, very harsh.
Yeah.
But these don't apply to Sunday worship or Wednesday worship. These apply to everyday life, in everyday situations, the rule of law in our society. These things help us to keep our society together.
Yep.
Elohim didn't just give us a set of do's and don'ts to keep us in line on Sunday mornings. These apply to our lives regularly. Not to covet another's property or possessions. not to even desire to covet another's property or possessions, not ignoring lost property that is to be returned to its owner. You know who the owner is, you know where the property is, but you're ignoring it, so that the owner's sitting there wondering where it's at. You know where it's at, but you're not going to take it. Not to refuse to help a person or an animal who is about to collapse with burden. Not to cheat or defraud with weights and measures. Not to possess inaccurate weights and measures. Again, there's nothing harsh or overbearing about these. These are not do-nots that are put on us by a cruel and wicked, wrathful God. This is from an Elohim, a mighty judge and redeemer, who cares very much about us and wants the absolute best for us. Regarding justice, and we've talked about the court systems. These are talking about how a judge is to act. So obviously a judge has nothing to do with what happens on Sunday morning or at the synagogue. A judge is not to commit unrighteousness, not to accept bribes and gifts from litigants, not to favor a litigant, not to avoid making a judgment out of fear of a wicked person. If you judge against me wrongly, I'm going to have you knocked off. Even under the fear of death, the judge still is required to render a proper judgment. Not to discriminate against the wicked. Just because they are evil people, you have to hear the facts before you make that determination. Not to pity one who killed or caused the death or loss of a limb. Not to pervert justice because of strangers or orphans. In other words, he can't allow his heart to get involved. A judge has to be impartial and keep his feelings out of it. Do not answer a cause according to the majority in order to pervert justice. Now, we talked about this a little bit last time in rabbinical decrees and takanot found within Talmud, that the majority rules, even if it goes contrary to Torah. If the rabbis say it by majority, well, they're breaking the Torah, because if the majority rules to go contrary to the word of Elohim, then they've just broken this commandment. Not appointing an unlearned judge, in this case ignorant of Torah, but we could say not to appoint an unlearned judge ignorant of the law. Not bearing false witness. That's a harsh commandment. Not committing murder. There's a hard one. That cruel God that we have. Don't go killing people. Not to convict on circumstantial evidence. This is in our law books. A witness may not sit as a judge in capital offenses. Part of our judiciary law. Not executing a murderer without a trial or conviction. Everybody gets a fair chance to be proven innocent before being executed. Okay? Not to punish a person for committing sin under duress. We have laws that say if this person was under a tremendous amount of stress when he did this particular act that's against the law, that's taken into consideration. And here in the Torah, it also says, if they're under a lot of strain, and that's the reason they did what they did, we have to take that into consideration. Maybe not so we can punish them for what they did, but maybe this person needs help instead of punishment. So Elohim isn't all about punishing. He's about helping people who do the wrong thing, but they do the wrong thing because they're wigged out about something. Not leaving obstacles on public or private domain, not to hesitate to save a life of someone in danger. That's a pretty cruel and wicked commandment. If somebody's in danger, you let whatever happen to them. Elohim is saying, don't hesitate to help that person who's in danger, even if it means endangering yourself. Not to mislead one another with wrongful advice. mislead somebody in order for you to get the last piece of apple pie.
The last thing goes.
There you go. Not to tell tales, don't lie. Not to bear hatred in your heart towards your brethren. What did Yeshua say? If you have something against somebody and you're there to offer a gift at the altar, leave your gift at the altar and go make it right with that person before you offer your gift. Don't bear hatred, don't bear animosity towards people. And if you do, that's something you have to make teshuva. And you make teshuva by going to that person and trying to straighten it out. Don't put another to shame. Not to take vengeance on another. Not to bear a grudge. Not to bear a grudge. Grudges make us sick. Physically, they make us ill. Not to take, well, we don't do this a whole lot, I guess, but not to take the entire bird's nest, mother and her young, you know. But again, it's compassion. Show compassion. Not to differ from or disobey the Kohanim or the judge. Here's one. It's Deuteronomy 13:1, written King James. It's 12:32, and all your English-based Bibles it's 12:32. Not to add to or take away from the commandments of Torah. Not to curse a judge. Not to curse a leader or a ruler. Leviticus 19:14, it says not to curse a Jew. And a lot of Christians say, we're not going to curse the Jewish people because anybody who curses them, Elohim is going to curse that person. Not to curse parents. There's that mean old God again, putting these harsh commandments on us, not to curse our parents, not to strike your parents.
Another hard one.
Yeah. Not to work on Shabbat. Sunday is the Christian misconception. Not to inflict punishment on Shabbat, because in order to give lashes, well, that's part of working. Now, regarding incest and other forbidden relationships, have at it on your own, because, yeah.
Wow.
But you see that there's a whole heaping bunch of them. And on the last page, regarding the monarchy. Now, next week we'll discuss, there's 4 of these that apply to the believer, but they're not kept by Christians. So, these negative commandments that are kept by the Christian community, these are the ones that they keep whether they realize it or not. Like I said, if we stripped away the Levitical law and we stripped away the commandments that are applicable only in Israel, we have roughly 222 commandments that are left. Out of those 222 commandments that are left, Christians already observe 87% of the commandments in Torah, whether they realize it or not. The 13% that they don't keep deal with the dietary laws, deal with keeping Shabbat on Shabbat, deal with keeping the feasts and the festivals, and stuff like reciting the Shema. So the 13% that they don't keep would actually enhance their relationship with Elohim. It wouldn't take anything away from it. And what we saw last week and what we saw this week is that the do's and don'ts found in the Torah are for our benefit. They benefit us. They're good for us. They help us to maintain a moral society. They help us to maintain proper relationships. They don't do anything to keep us in bondage. And these are, like I say, these are the nails and the wood and the pitch that we're putting on the ark. This is the rudder that we're installing to help us to maneuver that ark. These are the bins that we're installing on the inside to know where to put the animals. Everything Elohim gives us in Torah is for our own good. And kind of jumped the gun last Friday a little bit. That was